Hi. Thank you for joining us on such a beautiful day. My name is Rachel Roca. I'm a senior here at Manhattan College studying math and minoring in Spanish and computer science. And I am very happy to be moderating today. And so I just want to welcome you to our She Strike for Climate Justice for New York City's Climate Week in the season of creation. So thank you again all for joining us. We want to acknowledge that we gather at Manhattan College on the traditional land of the Lenape people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. This calls us to commit to continuing to learn how to be better stewards of the land we inhabit as well. I would now first like to introduce our very own campus minister, Father Tom Franks, to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. As we begin this celebration and time to gather both here on campus and virtually, I wanted to begin with what's actually sort of the official prayer for the season of creation. And so as we remember now and always that we are in God's holy presence, we pray, Creator of life, at your word, the earth brought forth plants, yielding seed and trees of every kind bearing fruit. The rivers, mountains, minerals, seas, and forests sustained life. The eyes of all look to you to satisfy the needs of every living thing. And throughout time, the earth has sustained life. Through the planetary cycles of days and seasons, renewal and growth, you open your hand to give creatures our food in the proper time. In your wisdom, you granted a Sabbath, a blessed time to rest in gratitude for all that you have given, a time to liberate ourselves from vicious consumption, a time to allow the land and all creatures to rest from the burden of production. But these days, our living pushes the planet beyond its limits. Our demands for growth and our never-ending cycle of production and consumption are exhausting our world. The forests are leached, the topsoil erodes, the fields fail, the deserts advance, the seas acidify, the storms intensify. We have not allowed the land to observe her Sabbath, and the earth is struggling to be renewed. During the season of creation, we ask you to grant us courage to observe a Sabbath for our planet. Strengthen us with the faith to trust in your providence. Inspire us with the creativity to share what we have been given. Teach us to be satisfied with enough. And as we proclaim a jubilee for the earth, send your Spirit to renew the face of creation. We pray in your Spirit and in your name. Amen. As I mentioned, this is for the Catholic community what we call the season of creation. And this is a relatively new idea in the Catholic standard, but is something that actually dates back quite far. Going back to 1989, the Ecumenical Patriarch actually instituted what for Christianity was the first celebration of a day of care for creation on September 1st. And as we gather in this year of 2020, amidst all the challenges of this global pandemic, of the struggle and difficulties of this time, we also gather with a bit of hope from our Holy Father, Pope Francis. In Roman Catholicism, this marks the 5th anniversary of his great encyclical Laudato Si on the care for our common home. Catholic social teaching invites us to look at all realities through a pattern of seeing, judging, and acting. And so as we gather in this day and listen to speakers as we pray and hope together, I invite us to follow that same paradigm as we look at care for creation, protection of our environment, stewarding what we have been given. As we see, sadly, we encounter troubling realities. As fires rage, as storms erupt, it's a time that troubles and frightens many, and rightly so. We're called upon as a community of faith, as brothers and sisters in this great earth that God has given us, to respond as best we can. And so, as we're called to action, I want to close with just some words that Pope Francis himself quoted at the end of his encyclical, pointing to the Earth Charter. And Pope Francis reminds each of us that as never before in history, common destiny beckons us to seek a new beginning. Let ours be a time remembered for the awakening of a new reverence for life, the firm resolve to achieve sustainability, the quickening of the struggle for justice and peace, and the joyful celebration of life. In all we see and say and do, may we find that divine presence in each one of us, care for what we have been given, and pass on a hopeful and a life-enriching future for all.
Thank you, Father Tom, for that. So our next speaker will be Jessica Haller. Jessica has been a leader with the Climate Reality Project since 2007. She is an entrepreneur and a mom of 4 and a community climate activist based in Riverdale. She is on the board of the Riverdale Natural Preservancy, has on the Jewish Lab for Sustainability. She has an MPA in Environmental Science and Policy from Columbia and the Earth Institute. Welcome, Jessica, and thank you.
Can I do this? I want to take my hands.
Yeah.
Sorry, if the mic wears a mask, I don't have to. Thank you. Thank you. Oop, closer. Can you hear me? Great. Thank you, Professor Pam Chasik at Manhattan College. Good afternoon. Thanks for putting Climate Week on the map here in the Northwest Bronx, IRL in real life. And thank you for all those watching us from all over the country who couldn't be here for Manhattan College. As Rachel said, I'm a mom, a neighbor, a climate activist. And I'm looking at these shoes. And coming from my faith, I appreciate what Father Tom said. And in my tradition in history, shoes often mean mourning. When you look at pictures from the concentration camps in Europe, you see the shoes. And those shoes are symbols of disasters not averted. And we're almost at the point here where we are looking at disasters not averted. What else has to happen? Floods, hurricanes, 18 hurricanes so far this year named the most that we've ever had. We're seeing hunger. From where I stand, I see in these shoes lives lost to COVID. And of course, those lives are disproportionately people of color in the hospitals, on the front lines, in our communities here in the Bronx. And how did we get here? Well, emissions are the problem. They're a global problem with local consequences. And did we know better? So, of course, we're all referencing the 1918 flu pandemic these days. And I recently heard at a climate reality event that in the 1918 flu pandemic, the communities living outside of the coal power plants that were ubiquitous at the time, those communities had higher mortality due to flu. So 100 years ago, we knew that communities living with poor air quality died at higher rates when they were hit with respiratory issues. Yet in New York City and cities around the country today, we continue to put trash transfer stations, bus depots, peaker plants in low-income communities. And we've replayed that 1918 air quality experiment again and again. Today in New York City, 1.2 million people live within 1 mile of a peaker plant. Here in New York City, there's a history of NIMBYism, not in my backyard, and a history of environmental racism. And that has caused the Bronx to carry more than its fair share of polluting infrastructure. So it is the environmental injustices of the past that are the reason we are sitting here with these empty shoes today. And while New York City has done a fairly good job over, let's say, the last decade of doing things like reducing particulate matter in the air, and that PM 2.5 is the driver of most of the asthma, and the nitrogen oxides also, we're actually not fixing the problem at its root. According to a New York City Community Air Survey, low-income neighborhoods still bear 55% of the burden of the ozone attributable asthma hospitalizations. So, I have a very good friend who says to me that really good solutions tend to solve multiple problems at once. And we have here in New York City and in the Bronx locally a very strong environmental and climate justice community fighting together for solutions that will solve multiple problems at once. The importance of this community is that these organizations, the New York Environmental Justice Alliance, and many more, they carry and amplify the voices of the people who carry more than their fair share of the impacts. And it's this movement that moves us from making an environment that's better to making life for people better. And in New York recently, thanks to these voices, we've achieved many recent victories, and I'll talk about two. The first at the state level is passing the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act last year, the CLCPA. The second is what we call Local Law 97, which is mandating major cuts to buildings, which was actually the single largest emissions reduction bill in the country. And now, to quote a New York City Environmental Justice Alliance report, now that this CLCPA is the law of the land, New York must rise to the challenge of drawing down our greenhouse gas emissions to achieve this 85% reduction and a carbon neutral economy by 2050, coupled with an investment in the energy infrastructure in frontline communities. So do you remember how my friend said that really good solutions solve multiple problems at once? How do we make sure that even as we achieve this carbon neutrality, we're getting cleaner air on the ground? How do we make sure that when we have cleaner buildings, people are benefiting from it? How do we make sure that we're going broader, deeper, longer, and faster? Well, our job now is to do that, is to solve those problems. It's Climate Week. So if we talk about climate a certain way, I believe that we can get there. And the way I like to talk about it is in 3 words: through equity, resilience, and sustainability. Equity, first, going back to the roots of the injustices, pulling the poor air quality infrastructure out of the communities, investing in them, balancing the ways that tenant protections now allow us to go deeper with the Local Law 97. And you could still today submit testimony in favor of that act. It's called Intro 1947, and the hearing was this morning, so you can go do that right after this event. Equity is creating economic opportunity, health opportunity for all people, specifically people in communities of color community, so that they can achieve the opportunity to thrive in the future. It's also the ability, the equity allows them to have resilience in the future. So here that brings us to resilience. Resilience means that no matter what comes at us, a pandemic, a flood, a fire, we have the means to protect ourselves, to stay healthy, to breathe deeply, to access food or whatever we need. It means we have the systems to get to where we need to go. It would have meant, for example, that public school kids could have gone online immediately with the pandemic because they would have had access to broadband and the technology that they needed. And of course, that didn't happen for those of you who are paying attention. Interconnected networks of people with redundancies make these systems more sustainable. So what's sustainability? Well, it's doing the stuff that we will take with us into the future. investing in the systems that we want to have with us in 2030 and beyond, and jettisoning what doesn't work, including the systemic injustices and racism that got us to this point. It means public schools will have solar panels and they'll grow food and they'll have an integrated curriculum because that's the stuff that we need in 2030. And it means not investing in burying our power lines, which was a big talk in the neighborhood recently when we all lost power. Many of us lost power for an extended period of time, because that's a relic of the 20th century. It means investing in distributed, local, connected, community-owned solar. These goals will be of the climate injustice source of climate justice. We turn NIMBY into YIMBY. Sorry, it's terrible. YIMBY is yes in my backyard. Yes, please make my street more walkable. Please close it if you have to so the kids can go out and play. Please compost in my building, even if it means I need another bin. On my corner, on my wall, on my roof. Please take a few squares of my sidewalk for new trees and I'll take care of them, because in the long run, it'll help me and my neighbors. We all need to say yes to the positive change and the yes to what needs to be done. If you would look out onto the river, say yes if someone wants to put a wind farm there, because that's the future, right? In my backyard, I want my neighbors to have the opportunity to learn how to work on that wind farm. So we're here to envision. That's what these shoes are. So you can all close your eyes. You two on the screen, you can close your eyes. Now close your eyes and step out onto that street corner in the Bronx. The ground might feel a little softer underfoot because it's holding more water than the concrete. Take a deep breath and breathe deeply because the air is cleaner, because there are no idling trucks nearby. A little girl runs by to your left. She's toothless because she's like 7 years old and she's running to school. And today she doesn't need an inhaler because that air is cleaner. Reach out and hug your friend, the new graduate, diploma in hand, ready to start a new job in the kind of work that may not even exist today. Okay, now open your eyes and see the shoes. Now I see the future in those shoes. I see equitable, resilient, and sustainable neighborhoods. 1 year ago right now, Greta Thunberg addressed the UN. She said, "You have stolen my dreams of my childhood with your empty words." But it doesn't have to be that way. The UN has declared this the decade of restoration. Now is the last best chance to create a livable future. I see in those shoes the just future that we are creating here together right now in our own city. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica, for those really inspiring words. Our next speaker is Consuelo Hernandez. Chelo leads the Earth Ministry at the Church of the Mediator on West 231st Street in Kingsbridge. She oversees the composting program and maintains the church's garden as well. Volunteers collect food scraps and compost them in their garden, allowing the soil to be regularly refreshed with the nutrients because of it. Hernandez's knowledge and understanding of horticulture has played a large role in improving the church grounds. We welcome you, Chelo.
Greetings. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present today. I want to thank the coordinators of the event. My name is Consuelo Hernandez, although many know me as Chelo. I am an earth-loving Christian, the mother of 2 young boys, and I lead the Earth Ministry of the Church of the Mediator in the Kingsbridge part of the Bronx. I am also a permaculture designer, an urban farmer, and a master composter. I've had the honor and privilege of working with the students of the Manhattan College Arches program for the past 3 years. Unfortunately, due to the lockdown and COVID, we were unable to continue our partnership this past spring. A little bit about Mediator and why I'm here. Mediator is unique in that we not only share the love of God, but also permaculture and composting. We work on the soil remediation of our grounds, as healthy soil plays a major role in sequestering CO2, and also bringing back the health to our trees, some which are more than 100 years old. Trees clean the air, provide oxygen, help cool the streets in the city, prevent soil erosion and water runoff, and many more benefits for us all if we care for them. We also grow food to help feed our neighbors using healthy organic methods. But we also teach them how to grow food and care for the soil. We are one of the only food scrap drop-off sites in the Bronx, offering our neighbors an opportunity to divert their food waste from the landfill. It is estimated that organic waste composes about 1/3 of New York City's total waste stream. Landfills emit toxic gases to our atmosphere and leach toxins into our soil and groundwater. Composting your food scraps and yard waste can help with this major issue and also sequester carbon. Zero waste initiatives inside our church are also simple steps we take. We capture rainwater from our roof to water our garden. We plant native plants for pollinators, as our food supply depends greatly on them. And we produce no waste on our grounds, as every last leaf and weed goes back into our soil. This year, sadly, due to COVID, we were unable to host our seasonal farmers market. Now, I am here to speak about climate justice through the lens of permaculture. But some of you might be asking yourself, what is permaculture? Permaculture is a system of ecological design, a way of thinking, as well as a global movement of practitioners, educators, researchers, and organizers, bound by 3 core ethics: care for the earth, care for the people, and fair share. The word coined by Bill Mollison means permanent agriculture and permanent culture. It is a harmonious integration of landscape and people, providing their food, energy, shelter, and other material and non-material needs in a sustainable way. The philosophy behind permaculture is one of working with rather than against nature, a thoughtful observation rather than thoughtless action, of looking at systems and all their functions as a whole. The ethics direct us to create abundance, share it fairly, and limit overconsumption in order to benefit the whole. So through the lens of permaculture, climate change is a crisis of systems, ecosystems, and social systems. We have abused the land and laid waste to systems we never need have disturbed. Most of us now understand that our way of life on this planet has to change. We are faced with a range of challenges that threaten our very existence. Permaculture offers a ray of hope, a way forward. It offers everyone the chance to be a part of the transition to a more eco-friendly, ethical, and sustainable future. Through the lens of permaculture, climate justice looks like self-accountability. We need to take responsibility for our own existence, share knowledge, use our talents to better things, care for our neighbor, and come together. Change needs to happen at a community level. We do not need to stand idle while our elected officials figure things out. Small changes make the difference. As Bill Mollison said, the greatest change we need to make is from consumption to production. If even on a small scale in our own gardens, if only 10% of us do this, there is enough for everyone. Hence the futility of revolutionaries who have no gardens, who depend on the very system they attack and produce words and bullets, not food and shelter. We witnessed how the natural world began to heal itself during the lockdown as humans treaded lightly. Let us work with nature, respect, and honor this beautiful gift God has given us. Throughout my studies and practice, I have been amazed by the healing power of bacteria, fungi, and plants. They all play their role in keeping the soil alive, We all depend on it. Soil is also key to sequestering excess carbon. Protection, restoration, and regeneration of ecosystems and communities are the keys to both mitigation and adaptation. Some of the strategies we can integrate to restore landscapes and communities on a large scale are a spectrum of safe, renewable energy technologies, scientific research and exchange of knowledge, information, and innovations, water harvesting, retention, and restoration of functional water systems, forest conservation, reforestation, and sustainable forestry, regenerative agriculture practices, organic, no-till and low-till polycultures, small-scale intensive systems, and agroecology, planned rotational grazing, grasslands restoration, and silvopasture systems, agroforestry, food forests, and perennial systems, bioremediation, and microremediation. Increasing soil organic carbon using biological methods, compost teas, mulch, fungi, worms, and beneficial microorganisms, and many more. And I quote Bill Mollison once more, "Though the problems of the world are increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple." The 12 principles of permaculture can also guide us in all parts of our life. This is the good news. We have the knowledge, we have the technology, we have the science, and nature holds the key. The question is, do we have the willpower to get it done? Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Chelo. Our next speaker is Jim White. Jim is the retired leader of the Riverdale Yonkers Society for Ethical Culture and co-founder of North Bronx Climate Justice. We welcome you, Jim.
Grateful for a mic mask, and grateful to all inviting me and us from Bronx Climate Justice North. The Ethical Society up the hill, a cool place. I urge you to drop in sometime. We have had a long-term connection. Of incredible need. So I'm very grateful. I was told that I might use a mic check format. Is that okay with everyone? Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yes. Love responses. So mic check. Mic check. Oh, yes, that's healthy. I come from the Bible Belt, so we just love calling responses back in Virginia. So, to fight for climate justice, this means to fight against racism. Our climate catastrophe is rooted in racist oppression. Enslaved Africans were forced to cut down forests, forced to disrupt water systems, plant and harvest huge acres of cash crops for ultimate ecological destruction. The genocide and stealing of indigenous peoples' land made possible eco-destructive mining, made possible fossil fuel extraction, and made possible greenhouse producing mass agriculture. all of this massive pumped greenhouse gases into warming the atmosphere. And it's causing our current climate catastrophe. And the people who were exploited to build this suicidal economy are those who now are hurt first and worst by it. But our frontline sisters and brothers are also leading the struggle for climate justice. We in Bronx Climate Justice North, we are uniting with Indigenous, Black, and Latinx leaders and groups to fight for survival for all of us. We organized with the valiant demonstrators to stop the Dakota Access Pipeline at Standing Rock. We have joined every New York and New Jersey fight against fracking and coal-powered plants. We mobilize against racially disparate food insecurity. Struggle to expand food stamps. Support farm workers' union rights. And we support the Kingsbridge Food Pantry at the Church of the Mediator. Local struggles are essential, but we must link up nationally and see our work connected to fighting racist police brutality. Fossil fuel industry pollutes Black, brown communities. And also massively fund police departments nationally. Environmental racism and pollution. Exposures exact disproportionate tolls on Black, Latinx, and Indigenous communities. The tragic cry, "I can't breathe." Let's hear "I can't breathe" again. How often have we heard that since Staten Island years ago? How often? This has two meanings. Police put feet and chokeholds on their victims' necks. On victims' necks, thank you. And the anguish of asthma and respiratory disease. The forces of destruction and oppression are mighty. But we are mightier. We are mightier. Believe it. So let us sing with our South African sisters and brothers. We shall not give up the fight. We have only started. We shall not give up the fight. We have only started. We shall not give up the fight. We have only started. Thank you. Got this? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. That was awesome. And so our last speaker today is Alexandria Villaseñor. At the age of 13, Alexandria co-founded the U.S. Youth Climate Strike Movement. Now at the age of 15, Alexandria has become an internationally recognized environmental activist, public speaker, and author and founder of several more initiatives, including the climate education-focused nonprofit Earth Uprising International. She has addressed the Democratic National Convention, the United Nations, and the World Economic Forum. She is a contributing author to All We Can Save, an anthology of women climate leaders, and a child petitioner for the groundbreaking international complaint to the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child, Children versus Climate Crisis. Alexandria also serves on the advisory board for the climate policy platform Evergreen Action. For her work, Alexandria has received the Earth Day Network Youth Leadership Award, the Rachel Carson Environmental Justice Award, the 2019 Tribeca Film Festival Disruptor Award, the Common Good American Spirit Changemaker Award, and was included on Politico's top 100 people influential in climate change policy list. We welcome you to Manhattan College, Alexandria.
Hello, everyone. First off, I want to say thank you for having me here today. It's great to be here with all of you. This is actually the first place I've been to in person that's a climate event since the pandemic and for Climate Week, so I'm very happy to see all of your faces. I first want to acknowledge how profound and symbolic all of these empty shoes are. It brings to mind all of the people who have lost their lives due to the climate crisis and wildfires, hurricanes, and floods. And so I think that it's very important to acknowledge them. I think that what this brings up for me is the concerns about the future. As we've seen within these past couple of months, you may be looking at the wildfires throughout the West Coast and other places being impacted by the climate crisis. The one thing it brings to mind for me is how the youth will be most impacted in the future by the climate crisis. And it's so important for our generation to stand up and be doing small areas like this and also protesting and doing everything we can. I think that I first want to talk about a brief history of the climate movement. I first got involved in 2018, and I first got involved after seeing the effects of the climate crisis in Northern California with the Camp Fire. And at the time, the Camp Fire quickly became California's worst wildfire in its history. But with the fires happening on the West Coast, it definitely has a new record. And so one thing that I was always told when I first got involved was that I always talked about, first off, that in the future, because of the climate crisis, school won't matter anymore. And that's why I was striking and protesting, because in the future, the new normal will be trying to stay safe from climate-fueled disasters. And we're already seeing those, like in California. If we didn't have a pandemic, we still couldn't go to school because of wildfires and the unsafe air quality. And I told people this when I first got involved, and I was told that I was being alarmist and I was being dramatic. And here we are now. And it's only been 2 years since, well, we said that this is going to happen. And scientists have been telling us that this is what's going to be happening for years now. And so I think that what's important to acknowledge is that the youth movement is seeing what's happening all around the world. And we're having conversations and reflection about how we can change moving forward. Actually, 2 days ago, on the 20th, it marked a year since the largest ever youth climate strike that happened, where over that entire week, there were 7 million young people protesting. A year later, and we have not seen the action that we need to take, that we need to see in order to mitigate the effects of the climate crisis. And so young people are changing our strategy and organizing. We're now starting to have conversations around reflection and what made our movement what it was, but how can we go forward and even farther? So we're using social media to our advantage. You may have seen all of the TikTok organizing that happened around the Tulsa rally. So young people are coming together in ways that we haven't really done before, or if we have, we're going to even larger lengths than we did before. And on the 25th, actually, there are going to be another action held by Fridays for Future, and here in New York City, XR Youth is having an environmental march against environmental racism. And so we're even doing more teach-ins and legal actions. And so we're finding new ways to take action during this time. So we're making sure that the coronavirus doesn't stop us organizing online and connecting with each other. And so going forward, one thing that you're going to see from the youth climate movement is that we're going to continue to become more intersectional, because that's what we need in order to go forward. We need intergenerational cooperation. We need to be centering and integrating the Black Lives Matter movement and Indigenous communities in it, making sure climate activism centers and amplifies those who are being affected by the climate. And that's how we'll see our movement win. I think that to end this all off, I think that it's important for all of us to come together, and for whether you're an adult here or a young person, we need everybody in this movement, because now is the time to see action. And so I want to end this off with do everything you can right now to take action during this time, whether it's doing something around the 25th or making sure you're voting, because this is the climate election. And so I hope to see all of us come together and create more change during this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandria. And can we give a big round of applause to all of our speakers today? They were all amazing. So before we go, I want to invite everyone who needs to register to vote to go by the table in Miguel, right on the quad by Miguel. They will help get you settled. As you know, this is a really important time to vote. And again, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out here today and joining us and for being a part of this event. We hope that now you're even more motivated to fight for climate justice. Please stay tuned for more opportunities with climate justice and other social actions on campus and beyond. And again, please vote. So if you need to, register and we'll help you get it. And just again, thank you everyone for being here and for speaking.